You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. Big episode last week, wasn't it? Hope you guys enjoyed that. The downloads went up quite quickly within 24 hours. So if you're new to this show, welcome. Thanks for subscribing. If you do that sort of thing on the YouTube page, if you haven't yet, maybe you should. These come out usually every Tuesday, but if you hit subscribe and get notifications and all of that, you'll always be informed when they drop live. They premiere live, they aren't live recordings necessarily. But yeah, that was a fun episode last week. This is a fun one this week. Friend of the show, friend in real life, and author of the book that we'll be talking about, For Fear of the Angels, Who Were the Sons of God, mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. By George Michalopulos, our guest today. These giants, these sons of God, was it the Nephalim? What was it? The giants, that's gigantes. We'd get all into this. I know the Book of Enoch is somewhat trendy and to be discussed online right now, as are the Nephilim. Well, our author today, our guest today, we're diving into who were these sons of God. It was mentioned, and we get into several theories out there on how they existed. Did angels come down and copulate with females on this planet? How's that possible? We get into that today with my guest. Welcome back, friend of the show, friend in real life, George Michalopulos. Sir, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Buck?
I'm good. I just recently got finished reading this book. See, I always do a little bit of an advantage for people watching rather than just listening. So I'm showing the book right now that we're going to talk about.
Thank you.
For Fear of the Angels, Who Were the Sons of God. That's important there. Mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. I appreciate you sending me this book. We'll get into the book, of course, and there's some interesting aspects in here. But before we get into it, give a little bit of an intro for yourself, for my audience who have just discovered the show and haven't seen you on past episodes, and talk about your website. I think that's important, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm a lifelong Orthodox Christian cradle, and I have two sons, Constantine and Michael, and I'm married to the lovely Gail Shepard, who is the proprietress of the Monomachos website, the blog that I started it back in 2009, and we got married in 2020, and it's been a rollicking ride. Right now, kind of on a hiatus, I must say, because there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're still active, and we're still trying to answer questions and. Just still interested in politics, culture, and religion. So,
all right. Again, the book is For Fear of the Angels, Who Are the Sons of God, mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. I find this book fascinating. There's things I had no clue about that I do now. Why this topic? Well, first, give an overview of the book, why you wanted to do this.
Okay, good question. I've kind of not been doing the blog so much because I'm writing. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I've written this book, obviously. But this book grew out of essay that fascinated me, and I was going to put it in a volume of the collected works of Monomachos, and then I just thought, just kept on going on and on and on, and I thought, there's way more here than meets the eye. And several years ago, I reached to my library. I came across this book right here, And that's where I got the title, For Fear of the Angels. And this is about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it was talking specifically about the giants in the Bible and the pre-flood era and all that. And things that I think I picked this up about 30 years ago. I had no idea. I mean, I'd read Genesis. I haven't read all the Bible, to be quite honest with you. I've read all the New Testament. But, it was just like, wow, this is interesting. This is fairly interesting. And then I came across a book by Father Seraphim Rose, Genesis, Creation, and Early Man, if memory serves. And he wrote specifically also of these beings. And you can hear me, okay?
Yeah.
And he mentioned a church father named Athenagoras of Athens, I believe. And he said that when you study Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology, and you come across these beings that are fantastic beings, chimeras or giants or titans, that these were real beings. Just because the Greeks believed them or the pagans believed them didn't mean that they were wrong. These were the product of an illicit union between the sons of God and human women. And I just started doing some more research into it. And I thought, well, you know what? That's interesting. I mean, it's just fascinating because, first of all, there's physical. How did this happen? And of course, now the church fathers, I'd say before 400 AD or in the ante-Nicene period, they actually did believe that these were the product of illicit unions. After 400, they started softening up on that and saying, no, the sons of God were the sons of Seth, whereas the daughters of men were the daughters of Kane. So that was pretty popular up until, I'd say, and I'm open to whatever it is, but I decided to just do some research. And I just found it to be more compelling to believe what the early church fathers believed. And it wasn't just the church fathers, Josephus and Philo of Alexandria, historians and writers, also believed of this too, that at one time before the flood, these beings, I hate to use the word extraterrestrials, but these angels acquired a human body and made it with human women. And because this happened, and they produced a whole bunch of offspring who were pretty evil and cruel offspring, and even engaged in cannibalism against human beings, God said, "Okay, that's it. Time's up. I've got to just destroy everybody and everything and start over, except for Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives." And this is also paralleled in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is probably older than the Old Testament. And I have found out since then that throughout the entire world, people of different cultures and different religions have believed that there was a worldwide flood and that humanity was wiped out. And for various reasons, I mean, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Enlil, the chief god, says, these human beings are disturbing my sleep with their noise, so I'm going to wipe them out. That was his reason. Moses' reason in Genesis tells us that it's because, so Moses said in Genesis chapter 6, the verse 5, assuming Moses wrote the Torah, which, I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I do believe that he did, but that man's mind was continually upon evil. Okay. And so God said, that's it. We got to start all over again. We being Elohim, Elohim being Hebrew for gods, in other words, what we believe to be the Trinity. And of course, the exegetes of the Old Testament and the church fathers believed that man had to be wiped out because everybody in the human race had been polluted to some extent by this genetic engineering. Everybody except Noah and his wife and their 3 sons. Okay, so God said, "Well, that's it. We got to start over with this pure blood family, and from there we'll create the races of man and start all over again." I mean, there have been archaeological finds, especially in North America, of very, very large human beings, and several dozens were found in the 19th century, and but nobody knows where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people thinking, well, the Smithsonian Institution came in and confiscated them.
Yeah.
And of course, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but, I've looked at these newspaper articles and photographs from the 1890s, and, it was like, these giants were found, these bodies were found in this cave over here in Arizona or whatever. And, I'm thinking, well, why would they go to that extent to make it up if, it just doesn't make sense. Now, why they're no longer around, I can't explain that. Although I will explain that in South America, they have found skulls of human children that were elongated.
Yes.
And very elongated. And if you look at the hieroglyphics of the pharaohs of Egypt, you'll find that they're wearing crowns that seem to cover this elongation. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. There's just more here than meets the eye, and the idea that Darwinism can explain the human race. I used to believe it because I was in pre-med, but I've just studied it too much to know that no. We didn't get here by gradual mutations. What happened to how we got here is a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
However, the thing about the giants, or the Nephilim, and I should say the word Nephilim, that means fallen ones in Hebrew. It also means giants. In the Greek New Testament, the Septuagint, they're called gigantes, or giants. Like before we get the word gigantic from, for instance, gigantes is the same thing. We're talking about these beings of enormous size who were the product of gods and human women.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I didn't overstep my bounds here.
No. Well, you're leading.
On.
Once a month, my supporters of this show and myself and a special guest have a Zoom meeting. It's not recorded. It's not posted. It's just private. It's between you guys, the guest, and myself. I do this because it means a lot for you guys who support me by showing me that this show means a lot to you. I love talking with you. I look at it as like a benefit for people that support the show, but it's really a benefit for me. I get to know you guys and have an off-the-record discussion with our guest. And, sometimes topics you don't want to necessarily have all the ins and outs discussed online, if you know what I mean. So to be in this group, please go to patreon.com/counterflow and donate $5 or more per month. And it gets you in this club. We do it once a month. It's a great time. It's great people. They're all smarter than me. So that's an upgrade from what you're used to. I can tell you that. The guests are always guests that people want to hear from. A lot of you guys will be familiar with many of the guests. Father Turbo's done it. Father Deacon Ananias has done it. David Patrick Carey's done it. My own priest, Father Ignatius, has done it. Father Moses McPherson's done it. It's a very good time, and I think you guys would enjoy it. If you love this content, please go to patreon.com/counterflow, $5 or more per month. Thank you. You're leading me into something I was going to ask, because
Yes.
I know you and your wife pay attention to what's going on in online discussions. I mean, a lot of it's allowed and happens on your website.
Yeah.
Did you realize, the topic of the Nephilim and, let's say, Book of Enoch are very trendy in certain circles right now? Did you know that?
Yes, and little did I know.
Okay.
When I started this about three years ago, and then all of a sudden on my YouTube feed, all these things popped up, and of course the Enochide literature, or the Book of Enoch, in the Hebrew canon, I believe there's just one book, but in the Ethiopian canon, there are 6 books of Enoch. And even here, it's fascinating because Jesus quotes from the Book of Enoch, and so are, and I had that in here, so you can, so too do Saints Peter and Paul and Jude and James.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They also make reference to things in the Book of Enoch. Now, why Enoch was not taken into the canon of the Christian church, story for another day. I don't know. But it is, the Enochide literature, the Book of Enoch is very trendy right now, as are the Nephilim. That's just everywhere. I'm just shocked at how much there is in YouTube and on Rumble. It's just it's shocking to me anyway.
So are people drawing this discussion of Nephilim? I mean, you can't say every single one because it's ubiquitous out there right now. And I said that word for my producer. Is it because there is some relationship to what you're talking about in this book? These sons of God, one word for what we're discussing here is Nephilim. Is that correct?
Right, exactly. Well, as I understand, the Nephilim specifically are the offspring. The sons of God were the sires, were the progenitors.
Okay.
And the daughters of men were the mothers. Okay. And, it says that the sons of God saw that they were beautiful, the daughters of men beautiful, and took any that they chose. In other words, they didn't ask. They just raped them, I guess, or they just, or, I could see where, just by genetically tinkering with the code, you could make, with the genetic code, you could make these chimeras and sphinxes and titans and giants and Nephilim, for want of a better word. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. I mean, for instance, Moses condemned all sorts of sexual transgressions, but one of them was bestiality. Well, I'm thinking, okay, why would he condemn bestiality? I mean,
right.
Obviously, that didn't come out right.
No, I know what you mean, but like, where did that even come from? Why would that enter his, what?
Yeah,
bestiality?
Yeah, exactly. Why would it enter into his mind? I mean, Abraham married his half-sister.
Yes.
Sarah. Okay. Adam and Eve had sons and daughters, sisters and brothers. Obviously, they married and had children of their own. But all of a sudden, you see, if a human being engages in bestiality, he or she is to be put to death. Mm-hmm. And I believe so to the animal. Anyway, where was I going with this?
Just why that even came about, because there must have been something that triggered it. You don't raise your kid and go, hey, so what should I do, Dad? What's good and what's bad? You don't automatically go, well, you don't have sex with animals for one. That's not something that registers as like, what?
Exactly. And there's just so much. But there are basically 3 different theories.
Yeah.
Okay. The first one is the plain text. This is what I call the plain text. It says what it is. It is what it says. Angels came down, had sex with human females, and produced these giants. That's I call that the plain text hypothesis. The second one is the Sethite hypothesis. And that was popular among church fathers after the Nicene period, in which is said that the sons of God were the lineal descendants of Seth, but the daughters of men were the lineal descendants of Cain.
Okay.
Cain was the degenerate criminal line, the evil line. And then they have the third hypothesis, which I call the immoral tyrant hypothesis, and that is that there were just some men back then who were well over 6 feet tall and who were chieftains and or kings, and they like to prostitutes or priestesses and call down a spirit into them as they were mounting her, and producing a line of kings that would come afterwards, like the pharaohs. The pharaohs were descended from a line of from I think Horus, one of the Egyptian gods, and the ancient Greeks thought that some of their kings were descended from Zeus.
Right.
Okay. Now Zeus himself, there's a theory that he was really a king, a person, a hero who had been deified after his death. I believe his name was Asterion. And the same thing with the Scandinavians and what they believed about Odin. Odin, whom they called the Allfather. And there's pretty good evidence that he probably was a chieftain of this group of Proto-Scandinavians who emerged out of the Caucasus Mountains and went north to Scandinavia. And so that children who in the sons or his line were kings or chieftains of the Norsemen. Interestingly enough, the Japanese believe that the emperor, the god emperor of Japan, is a god, and he is descended from the sun goddess. Okay, so she had sex with a man, I suppose, and brought this child, and the child became the king of the Yamato clan. And that eventually they just kept on, this kingly line just kept on going. So, there is something to be said for that as well. So those are the three hypotheses that only make sense.
I guess, especially considering the examples you just gave, I suppose we know the answer to this, but some people are going to be hearing this saying, what is this guy talking about? How can angels and humans interact? That doesn't seem possible to me. And I've read the Bible. Talk about that.
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, angels are spiritual beings. Okay. And Jesus himself said in Luke, I can't remember the exact chapter verse, that in the afterlife, we are not married. We're given in marriage because we're like the angels. Okay. And that's good. But he's talking about the future, now. So that is a point against this hypothesis, except for the fact that I say, wait. He's talking about the future afterlife. He's talking about once the apocalypse happens, so to speak, and the last judgment, and we have glorified bodies, some to eternal joy, and others to eternal damnation. So we will have bodies. You see, they'll be glorified. They won't be like these, but still. Now, the question is, how can a spiritual being have sex with a human female? Yet, okay, that's a good question. I'm not going to answer that right just yet. And it is uncomfortable. Yet, at the same time, throughout the Old Testament and even into the New, we do see angels interacting with human beings all the time. Jacob wrestled with an angel, and it took all night long, if I remember correctly. And it was so even though he was able to pin the angel to the ground and wrest the concession from him, he was crippled for the rest of his life. Jacob was traumatized. He had to walk with a limp for the rest of his life. So obviously something took place there. Okay. So there was close to body contact there, obviously.
Yes.
Physical contact. I'm not saying there was sexuality, but when the two angels went to Sodom, the men of Sodom, and they were in Lot's house, the men of Sodom wanted to sodomize them, wanted to rape them. And, Lot, of course, said, no, please don't. And he said, look, I'll give you my 2 virgin daughters. Just leave these guys alone. And they said, no, we want those 2 guys. Okay, obviously, Lot thought that they were human beings with bodies. The Sodomites, the men of Sodom, thought that they were human beings and they wanted to, rape them. Okay. You've got some interesting things here. I mean, can humans and angels interact? Well, again, in the Old Testament, they did a lot. I mean, I'm just bringing just a few instances in which humans and angels interacted. In the New Testament, we see that the angel Gabriel came to the Virgin Mary and told her that she was going to bear a son. Now, he did come to Joseph as well, but only in a dream. But then again, you go into the book of Hebrews, I believe it's the book of Hebrews, Paul tells Christians, he says, you may be entertaining angels unawares. Be kind, be merciful. If somebody's hungry, give them some food to eat. That may be an angel. Okay?
Yes.
So honestly, angels are spiritual beings. I don't deny that for a second. But when they come to earth, well, they can manifest as human beings.
And George, also something that seems implicit in every discussion we've had on this today, they're males.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's a good question. And and I thought about that. And usually in the Greek myths, it was usually male gods who were mating with human females. There's I think Achilles' mother was a sea goddess who seduced a Greek hunter, a man who was sleeping. That's rather late in development. Okay, so why do they only take male bodies? My feeling is that, and this is just speculation on my part, it's just that God created the male first, and out of the male, he created the female. So in the pre-lapsarian, in other words, before the fall, the human being was probably somewhat androgynous or masculine in a way that you and I are not masculine. We are in a post-lapsarian type human form, one which rots and dies eventually. But in the original, the form was. This is very uncomfortable. Okay, for me to say, but was masculine in a way that we are not.
Okay, and
this would explain why Jesus used masculine language to describe his Father. He said, I am the Son of Man, my Father, our Father. Does that mean that God has a white beard and all that plumbing? No. But we have masculine. Jesus used masculine language. Moses did. We would be wrong to go away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm getting theological here. However, getting back to your original point, for some reason, whenever angels do come to earth, they come in a masculine form. Now, does that mean that they have all the equipment?
Right.
Well, the men of Sodom thought that they had the right equipment,
Apparently, yeah.
And so I'm going to say yes. So do I believe that these angels had sexual intercourse with human females? Yeah, I do.
Okay.
You can look at it the other way. As uncomfortable as that is, and may seem, and you try to figure this out intellectually,
Yeah.
at the same time, we do believe that the Virgin Mary
Right.
carried Christ without human seed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's hard to believe too, but we believe it, and I personally believe it's true. So do millions and millions and millions of Christians of all denominations. So it's like an opposite thing. Mary is spotless,
Yeah. Yes.
without seed,
Right.
and it's the mirror image of what these angels did, which they stained human females.
Yes.
Okay, and and you can look at these kind of like these mirror things. For instance, Eve came out of Adam's body without a mother. Jesus came out of Mary's body without a father.
Mm.
So it's a recapitulation if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis 3:15, God punishes, the serpent, and it tells him that
Yes.
her heel, she is the woman, and her heel will bruise your head. And going along from that, that's why Satan felt like he had to pollute the human line so that there would not be a redeemer who would come forward. And eventually he'd be just as polluted as everybody else, instead of being a sinless person. So anyway, I don't know. That's kind of like, I don't know. It's a mystic. It's a mystic way of looking at things, like Eve coming out of Adam without a mother, Jesus coming out of Mary without a father.
Mm-hmm.
And so these angels, forgive me, penetrated human females and stained them, but Mary, spotless,
Yes.
and ever virgin, gave birth to the Son of Man, the second Adam.
Is it appropriate to call these angels we're talking about fallen angels? So it's in they're often raping.
Yeah.
So it's a negative, malicious act. And then of course Mary was created by through the Holy Spirit coming
Right.
in. Excuse me, not created. Jesus was. So we're looking at the Holy Spirit, which was holy, obviously, versus fallen angels, and then they're creating this.
Well, that's a very good point, Bob.
Okay.
That's a very good point. And I wish I'd maybe in the second edition I'll put that in. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. It really does. Anyway, so
I got another thing to get to here, because
Yes.
You mentioned something in this book that I thought, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I had heard this about Mormons. Maybe I'm incorrect, but you do say some far-right racialist cults believe that the non-white races are descendants of either Kane or a pre-academic, more primitive ancestor. I might have written that down wrong.
yes.
Either of which survived the flood. Someone told me once that Mormons think, for lack of a better phrase, black people are descendants from Kane. Again, if you're watching this and you're Mormon and I'm wrong, forgive me. But you do mention that that's a thought that some people have in here.
Yeah, I wasn't actually specifically thinking about the Mormons. From what I understand, the Mormons have accepted or taken the view of Origen, the church father Origen,
Yes.
who believed that in the pre-incarnation of the world, the pre-creation of the world, 1/3 of the angels fell and went with Satan. 1/3 stayed, and 2/3 stayed with Michael. But they believe that 1/3 stayed with Michael, and 1/3 were neutral. And these neutral angels became incarnated as human beings eventually when their parents had sex. A soul went into that fetus. Origen believed something like that. I think he called it the apokatastasis. I could be wrong about that. Anyway, but there are some far right cults, alt-right, out of Idaho and stuff like that believe that that there was a before Adam there were human beings, but they were not created in God's image, and that they still have populated to this day.
Okay.
There was a Jewish rabbi in the 15th century who believed the same thing, by the way. I can't remember his name. Payan. I cannot remember. I'm sorry about that. I probably got it I know I've got it in the footnotes. But so yeah, that's and I quote Beowulf, or it's in the book Beowulf, that there were orcs and elves who survived the flood.
Right. Okay.
He may have been descended from Kane.
Okay. And speaking of, you mentioned a Jewish rabbi. I've got a question that you kind of touch upon in here about rabbinic Judaism versus, let's say, 3rd century Jews. There's, I mean, and correct me if I'm gathering this information and filtering it incorrectly, but I did not know this. You're saying in this book, you point out rabbinic Judaism was different than, let's say, 3rd century Judaism as far as monotheism versus the Trinity. Is that correct? That 3rd century Jews were closer to us? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have to, excuse me. This should be in everybody's library, right?
Well, I should know. I've read that book. Yes.
Yeah, I know. It took me almost a year to read it. So, yeah.
Yes.
The Second Temple Judaism is what we're talking about.
Right.
Second Temple Judaism, roughly from the time that the Second Temple was built after Cyrus the Great freed the Jews to leave Babylon, and go back to Judea and erect the temple again.
Yes.
So the Second Temple, which lasted from roughly, I guess, 450 BC till about 70 AD when it was destroyed by the Romans. So roughly a half a millennium. And there is something called Second Temple Judaism, and it's not rabbinicism. Okay, it was a priestly cult. They had liturgy, they had sacrifices. You had to atone for your sins, and so on and so forth. And I personally believe that the Orthodox liturgy is a continuation very much of what you had in there, except for it's an unbloody sacrifice.
Yes.
Okay. So the Judaism of the Second Temple period was it's what we rose out of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whereas once the temple was destroyed, then the Pharisees took over because the temple was no more. And they created, for want of a better word, the synagogue. I mean, the synagogue had existed earlier too, but the synagogue became Judaism, and it's called rabbinicism.
Mm-hmm.
And its main point of reference, scriptural reference, is the Talmud.
Yes.
Which came after the New Testament. Okay. And we could spend hours talking about the Talmud, but it was a way to keep the Jewish spirit alive and exclusive, to continue its exclusivity. But as well as other things. But in the Second Temple period, what am I trying to say? Gentiles were welcome to worship at the temple.
Right.
They had a special pavilion just for them, and they would bring sacrifices or make contributions, monetary contributions. And if I remember correctly, the reason Jesus went ballistic on Holy Monday is because the pavilion for the Gentiles had been overtaken by all the money changers, and there was no room for the Gentiles to come make their sacrifices and stuff like that. So before that, during the Second Temple period, yes, Judaism was an exclusive religion, but it was also an evangelistic religion, for want of a better word. And there just was a lot of basically whatever you see in the New Testament, especially in the Book of Jude, it is synonymous with what went on in the temple and among Jews at the time. There was no dichotomy between the church and Judaism before 70 AD. Now,
right.
I'm not saying that things were always hunky-dory. No. King Herod Agrippa killed James, son of Zebedee.
Yeah.
Blabbed Peter a couple of times. Imprisoned, Paul a couple of times, imprisoned Peter. There's always these tumults, but there was no high priest among the Jews who said, these people who worship Jesus and who follow this Jesus are wrong, they're gone, hell, schism.
Right.
That happened after the fall of the temple.
Correct. Just to make a point to people listening, our liturgy in the Orthodox Church pulls many things from Judaism, the original form.
Absolutely.
And the temple and the way our liturgy's structured and the way our church is actually structured. And that, where do you think that, obviously that came from the apostles that were still taking part in all of this when everything was still not necessarily hunky-dory, but somewhat friendly, as opposed to the rabbinic Jews that later on, it was not friendly at all because they were specifically anti-Christian. Yeah. And so just to make that point, that is where that couldn't have happened anywhere except from the apostles pulling the traditions from the Jewish temple worship.
I agree. The whole purpose of Israel was to isolate a group of people from the pagans and help destroy paganism and use it to destroy paganism. There's truth there. And I'm going to say something that I can't prove, but it seems to me from what I've read that during the Second Temple, there was a wide variety of ideas, what we would call a Greek theolegumenon, among the Jews. As long as the temple was standing and you went to the temple at least a couple of times a year, or at least a couple of times in your life, and made the sacrifices and stuff like that, then you were in the club. Okay? And that if you were one of these, these Jewish followers of Jesus, you were still in the club. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. I don't think that I think that there was a lot of views that were allowable as long as you were a monotheist and you attended to the temple and you observed the laws, and including circumcision and stuff like that, and kashrut, or the kosher laws, that there's far more liberal, for want of a better word. I could be wrong about this, but that's just the way it seems to me. For instance, you had the Pharisees, you had the Sadducees, those are the ones who controlled the temple, and the Essenes. Okay? And the Essenes were the ones who went out to the desert because a lot of reasons for that. And but they all held to what is called Judaism. Now, the Sadducees did not believe in an afterlife, but the Pharisees and the Essenes did. But, nobody was going around pointing fingers at each other saying, you're out, unless you were an apostate, I guess, or an open apostate. Anyway.
How did the Second Temple Jews view these sons of God that we're talking about?
From what I understand, and that's a very good question. That's probably where I should have, 10 minutes ago. They believed that these sons of God were literally angels.
Okay.
Who had sex with human females. Like I said, Flavius Josephus says that. Now, he's not a theologian. He was of the priestly class, but he's writing his histories. Philo of Alexandria said the same thing. The first Jew that I know of, the first rabbi that I know of who said, no, you're wrong, it was Yohanan ben Zakkai. And Yohanan ben Zakkai was one of the leaders of the rabbinic party after the destruction of the temple, who created, for want of a better word, what we call Judaism, or what I call rabbinicism.
Yes.
He and several others met at Yavneh in about 85 AD. And that's when they said, okay, we're going to fix this up once and for all. And they took out the books of the so-called Apocrypha because they were written in Greek. And they said, from now on, you're going to have rabbis. They're going to be in charge. And you got to go to the synagogue. And you got to, you got to do a bar mitzvah for your son. And when he's 13 years old, and what we call Judaism today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long-winded question of saying that from what I could find out, Yohanan ben Zakkai was the first of the Jewish thinkers, exegetes, to say that no, these sons of God were just these immoral tyrants who like to have a good time with the temple priestesses.
And so let's start to draw some lineage here. The angels came down, copulated with, they were males, or at least took male form, copulated with females, created these Nephilim giants. Is that correct? Then what did these giants do?
Well, they were tyrants, basically. They were monsters, not only literally but figuratively. I mean, they oppressed human beings because of their larger sizes, and some of them may have just been 7 feet tall. Okay, some of them could have been 20 feet tall. I don't know. Some of them could have been these chimeras like sphinxes, but they were bad apples, and they terrorized human beings, ordinary human beings who did not have their strength. And that's why God says, okay, we've got to start over. We just got to wipe them all out completely. Mm-hmm. And we have to make sure that even human beings are wiped out, because a lot of them have DNA from an ancestor who was one of these.
Yes. And for people listening going, that is just sounds preposterous and crazy.
I know.
To your point earlier, and I have seen some of these documentaries as well, there's literally been people finding, skeletons, if you will, or certain pieces of evidence that's like, well, where's this? This is a giant human. When did this exist? And it's like, well,
exactly.
Read George's book.
Thank you. Yeah. If you want to order it, let me give you my. You can. Let's see. It's published by Highland Jenkins. So here it is, and you can get it by going to Amazon. And let's see, what else can I tell you about this? This is for amateur show. We cannot have it all. But anyway, there you go. You can go to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com and order it. And it could be delivered directly to you. It comes in both paperback and hardback. Paperback is only $16.95. Hardback, it's $27.95. So anyway,
it's an easy read. So you guys, I'm showing you this. This is just like a big essay that George wrote. And there's plenty of footnotes too. I have to ask then. So we mentioned early on the three, let's say, like working theories or theses about where there's three different kind of working. What were these guys? What were these beings, or what really happened? You end up landing on one saying, okay, I've done all this research. Here's George's opinion on what this was. Talk about that.
Well,
and if you want to say, hey, I don't want to give any spoilers away, people order the damn book, we can do that too. But
okay. I mean, the Cephite hypothesis, which I guess is very popular among many church fathers in the post-Nicene period, but not all. It's got a lot of things. It makes more sense in that you don't have to worry about spirits or angels having sex with humans. So you take that off the table. At the same time, the Book of Genesis says that Kane, he was exiled east of Eden, and his harvests were pitiful. Okay, and according to the Cephite hypothesis, the Cephites were these glorious, ripped human beings who were righteous, and they lived liturgically because they sang. Whereas the sons of Kane were these degenerate little homunculi. Okay, let's go with that. Okay. In the Book of Genesis, it talks about that all of the great things that we think about civilization, including the concept of the city itself, come from the line of Cain. It says in the Book of Genesis that Cain built the first city, which he named after his son Enoch, another Enoch, by the way.
Right.
Also, the people who invented brass and metallurgy came from Cain. The people who invented tent making and shepherding came from Cain. The people who made tents came from Cain. And the same thing about Seth's line. Also, interestingly enough, there are 9 generations from Seth to Noah, but there are only 7 generations from Cain to Noah. So if you do the math, that means that Cain's descendants lived longer lives than did Seth's descendants. Okay? And
you've got a nice chart right here about that in this book.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's right there. And of course, according to one tradition, Naamah, the sister of Tubal-Cain, was the wife of Noah. You didn't say who his wife was exactly, if I remember correctly. The point is, if Cain descended, well, for want of a better term, these buck-toothed hillbillies, and the women were, kind of like not very pretty at all, then why would the sons of Seth, who were righteous, take a hankering to them? I mean, I wouldn't, it's, and so that doesn't make sense to me. And also, it doesn't make sense to me that God would, the idea for the destruction of the human race was because of miscegenation or race mixing. Okay. Seth's line and Cain's line were human beings. There was no race mixing.
Right.
Okay. So why would God feel the need to destroy them? It just doesn't make sense to wipe out everybody except for Noah and his wife. Okay. That's the idea. That's what leads me to not believe in the Cephite hypothesis. And anyway.
So that leads us to...
I'm sorry.
And so that leads us to one last hypothesis.
Well, there still is the immoral tyrant hypothesis, or the idea that this is what those who believe in evolution believe, Darwinism, that eventually, that there are certain big men who are chieftains, alpha males, and they take, and they build these altars, and they have these temples, and they just mount these priestesses or temple prostitutes and have children, and then these children become, the son becomes the king after them, and his son becomes the king after them, like Pharaoh, all the way down. Okay, yeah. That does not leave for a spiritual element in the universe, or the idea that there's a God.
Yes.
Still, why would God have the need to destroy all of humanity? So the first hypothesis, the plain text, which is what I call the plain text hypothesis, makes the most sense, because it means that the human genome was so corrupted, except again for Noah and his wife, that God said, I had to start over. And so that's why and then there's several reasons, and you can read, I believe that's the one that makes the most sense.
Excellent. Any parting words before anything that's going to leave people wanting this book? I mean, this interview already will, but any kind of parting words or generalized thoughts on what you want to leave people with regarding this topic? Because I think it's kind of cool.
Just read it with an open mind.
Okay.
And that's it. And if you feel that I'm wrong, or I've left something out, feel free to get a hold of me and, write your own monograph or essay. I mean, I read a lot of these essays and stuff like that. And, I'm not perfect, nor do I pretend to be. And, but I would, that's all I ask, is that you read with an open mind. Don't think I'm some wild-eyed heretic here. I don't believe I am. I mean, like I said, I've quoted many of the church fathers who believe this, so I think I'm in good company.
Yes.
Anyway,
before we get out of here, in a second, I'm going to let you plug the website again, and just so we can leave people with that. But I know you follow politics because we text about it from time to time, and you post stuff. What were your thoughts on the quote unquote female bishop that spoke to?
Oh my God! Now I'm going
to get you fired up.
Oh Jesus, Lord! Oh my God! I mean, this is okay. This actually, I touch on this.
Yes.
There is a little bit of God created he them. I looked at her, and I'm thinking, okay, this is not only and not a real bishop, but yeah, she's a heretic and she's a fool. Okay. And I feel sorry for the Episcopal Church.
Yeah.
Because they have her there, but not so much anymore. I used to feel sorry, but not as much anymore. They're just, happily going along their merry way down to perdition. And I will say this, that whenever, gosh, I'm going to get in so much trouble for that. Whenever women, as a rule, are allowed to teach in church or in positions of authority, this is kind of what you expect after a while. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I like Margaret Thatcher. Okay, so hats off on me here. But. And I guess if I were a Frenchman 600 years ago, I'd be following Joan of Arc. But as a rule, these are the exceptions that prove the rule. And that female priestess was a fool, and anti-Christian, as far as I'm concerned. And I was going to leave it at that because it's just it's not.
No, I'm with you. She brought up it was clearly that she was trying to get her moment in the sun and get her political agenda out there in front. She knew everyone would be watching this, of course. It's got Trump and Vance were there. Trans children. I was unaware that there was such a thing.
Yeah, I know. I asked one of my best friends, I just called him up one day. He's a lawyer, smart guy, cousin of mine. I said, Chris, what's a trans woman? I just got him cold because I'm listening to something on the radio. And he said, I don't know.
Right.
And, so you see, and again, this kind of crap was going on before the flood.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Right.
And androgynous things and things like that. If we don't repent as a nation, and I think we may be again to repent, I don't know.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Now let's get to the website, your website again. I want to plug anything. And again, you said so we can order this book on Amazon, but plug your website.
Yes. Monomahos.com.
How do you spell that, George? People are going to hear that and go, what?
M-O, you ready? Monomakhos.
Yeah.
I had to think about it.
See, yeah.
I had to think about it. Yeah.
Where the Counterflow podcast is featured on that site too. So
yes, it is. It is. So, you go through Barnes & Noble or Amazon or iTunes and order this book.
Okay.
So
on iTunes, does that mean it's audio form too?
I don't know. I didn't do it in an audio form, but that's from my troubleshooting.
Well then, all right.
Why she said that? Whatever. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, this is the first time I've actually had a book published. I've got several others in the pipeline that I'm looking for publishers right now, but they're not done yet. And anyway, so
awesome, George. Thanks for being here again on Counterflow, sir.
Okay, you take care. Thank you for having me.
You got it. Good discussion of a fascinating topic. It's the more you learn about church history and the Bible, the more you find out that there are a lot of really deep, fascinating things to discuss. And I think today's topic, those giants, is one of hundreds of thousands of, maybe it's just infinite, really, the things we could discuss from that sort of thing. I hope you guys enjoyed this chat. As for the show, you know where to find us on the YouTube page. Please subscribe to that. On Twitter, @BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And let's see, the Telegram group's always doing well. We will be getting the Zoom going soon. I'm in the process of getting someone booked to chat with you guys, the Patreon supporters, at patreon.com/counterflow, $5 or more per month. And next week, we have a new guest. She's become a new friend to me, and her story is fascinating, would be putting it lightly. We'll be going over her new book as well, and that's a surprise. Until then, you guys have a good one. See ya.
You get split in half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.